One, make sure you have a good amount of space to roll coils. The other thing I want to make sure that I have is I have a large piece of plastic that I will put all of my coils in as soon as I'm done rolling. I also like to make sure that I have a spray bottle, because then I could moisten these. Don't oversaturate them, but you notice that I could just stack them all on top of one another once I've been rolling. This will just keep everything nice and moist. You want to make sure these coils stay moist. They are really impossible to connect to one another when they're even just a little set up. So you can keep your coils, let's say from Tuesday, Thursday, you'll be able to keep your coils. So let's say you roll a good amount, and that's what I'm gonna have you guys do. You're gonna learn how to roll. So you're gonna roll a whole bunch, and then ideally start building. That's how you should be doing this every single class. You shouldn't be rolling one coil, adding it to the piece. Rolling another coil, adding it to the piece. You should have a selection of coils in the beginning of class, roll a good amount, and then start building. You'll be able to pay a lot more attention to the form of the piece, your measurements, all of those things if you have it done this way. I'm teaching a specific way on how to do coil building. So the biggest thing is going to be for you guys to learn how to roll even coils. So notice that these are not super thin, okay? I'm going to need to have a thickness to attach the one to the one underneath. So half of this width will be actually blended into the one underneath. So I can't have it be a super thin coil, because then if I blend half of it down, I will end up with a very thin wall. If you pick up the coil vessels that I have here, they're not light. They're not. They're going to be heavy objects. It's okay. So ideally, they're even, consistent in width. They don't have to be perfect though. The length of them does not have to be the same every single time. You can have shorter ones, you can have longer ones. It doesn't mean that if you have longer ones, you're going to have a better piece. In fact, if you roll long ones that are poorly rolled with unevenness, a thin and then a thick area, your vessel will be horrible. So that should be of your utmost importance first, is really getting to roll coils even and well and consistent. So I always make sure I have this piece of plastic here. My coils are always wrapped. I make sure that I have a clean workspace. At times it is helpful to moisten a little bit of this canvas table that I'm working on. So when I'm going from a mass of clay, what I don't do is put this down and then try and start rolling. Okay, it doesn't end up working well. I'm going to take a piece and I'm first going to squeeze this in my hands into pretty much a coil shape. I'm going to pinch this out almost as the correct diameter of coil that I would like. Then I'm going to put it down. So when I roll coils, there's a lot of different methods in rolling coils. I like to kind of keep my palms down on the table. So I'm rarely ever like this, because this will cause unevenness. My fingers are spread as wide as they can. And I'm going to roll from the center out. Center out. So I'm just stretching the coil just a little. I'll speed it up a little bit just to get any kind of fingerprints out. And that's it. I'm going to put this one in with the others, wrap it back up, grab another section of clay. Again, I'm using kind of like rounding, using the round part of my palm to kind of pinch this out, trying to keep it consistent. And now I'm just stretching the clay from the center out. If I have little areas like, see that little guy? It's not the end of the world. Maybe I'll just fix that. Most students will have issues with their coils becoming flat on one side. All right. Most of the time this happens because students are working with too much clay. So if you're working with too much clay and you see that that's happening, work with less clay. The second reason why this happens, you don't pinch the clay out enough into a coil shape and you're relying on rolling it completely. Pinch the piece out as much as possible. The other reason why this happens, let me just pinch this out, is by kind of these palms coming up. Doing this. Okay, that's already flattening it out. So if I get a flatness to the piece, so right now this has a weird flatness. It's definitely flat there. I'm gonna kind of pat this side down. Trying to just get it back to round. What I don't do is just keep rolling it and hope that the flatness disappears. I'm gonna try and kind of fix it and get it back into round. If I have an area that gets a little thinner, I'm gonna cut it off and use the rest of the coil instead. So always know that you can fix things. So you get better at this through practice. In the beginning, you're gonna roll some pretty lousy coils if you've never done this before. But the more you do it, the better you get. What's important is that you do not start building your vessel until you have some consistent coils. It's gonna be really important because again, that's going to really tell you how structurally sound the vessel is gonna be. If you have coils that are thin and then thick and then thin, the inconsistency will cause it to crack and break and have weakness. So you just wanna make sure that you're doing things kind of slow and consistent. So again, palms are down. So I could always hear my hands rubbing the canvas. I am putting some pressure down with my fingers here. And you can kind of see that. See, I kind of see some finger markings on this. Because I am putting pressure to stretch it. I'm also using speed of moving it back and forth to help stretch it. So again, multiple varied lengths, doesn't matter. What matters is not to have varied thicknesses. Okay, so I just have a bunch of clay here. I'm gonna make sure, I'm just gonna kind of pat it out as flat as I can. I could actually make a slab just by doing this really evenly. And it's shaking the camera horribly. And I'm gonna wanna make sure that, I rotate it to the other side. If I had the luxury of having a rolling pin, I could then compress this down. Notice that I'm going in multiple directions. I can pick this up, turn it over. You do not want your slab too thin. You want your slab to be about as thick as your coil would be. About. It doesn't have to be exact, but you definitely don't want it like a thin piece of paper. You want it to have some substance to it. If it ends up that as you're rolling, you get like little air pockets like this, there's a little air pocket in here. All you have to do is just stab it and just compress it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take my sponge, very lightly damp, and I'm doing what's called compressing. I'm compressing it down, I'm compressing out any air pockets. Again, if I find any other air pockets, I can stab them with a needle tool or a knife tool. And then usually just through recompression, they will be eliminated. I'll also then use this metal rib tool. So this is the first time you guys will be working on a slab piece. This is a slab of clay. Our next assignment is going to be on slabs, where you're going to have to do this a lot. So I'll even turn it, do it to the other side, make sure the slab is nice and compressed. This is your foundation to the piece. It should be nice and even and compressed. All right, so that looks good. I can bring this over to a piece of newspaper here. All right, so I know, according to my measurements, my base is going to be 4.5 inches in diameter. All right. So I'm going to choose to use the center of the slab because that's where it's going to be the most even. You know, there's a high tendency that towards the edges it might get a little thinner. I'm just going to put my ruler in the middle. And I'm going to measure, I'm going to plot little points. One at 0 and one at 4.5. All right. What is half of 4.5? 2.25. So I'm going to mark that on my ruler. That's my center point. Now I'm going to pick up my ruler. I could turn my slab or turn the ruler, whichever I want to do. That center point, I'm going to put it back at the 2.25, 2.25 measure. And I'm going to make a dot now again at 0 and 4.5. And so all I'm doing right now is I am plotting points that will help me draw an even circle. That's it. So I'm going to put the dot that I put for the center back at 2.25, mark again at 0 and 4.5. I could do this 1,000,000 times. I could do this 5 times. However many points it takes for me to be able to draw a decent circle. Does it have to be the most perfect circle on the planet? No. But it shouldn't be oval. It shouldn't be square. It shouldn't look triangular. Your goal is to ideally make a circle that is approximately your diameter, right? So let's say I'm still not sure. Now, could you guys see that pretty good? Could you see all the little points plotted? All right, so there's little hash marks. Now I'm just gonna take my needle tool and I'm gonna just try and connect them. Just drawing a line, I'm not cutting. So I'm just drawing between all the little hash marks. So this is why I said, you might need a whole bunch. You might need just a few. But drawing this out is a lot easier than just trying to cut it freehand. And it's also a lot easier than trying to find something around here that has for me, it would be a 4.5 inch diameter. For you, it might be a different number. Granted, yeah, you could trace something that's circular, but again, I don't know what diameter you need. All right, so now I got it all traced out. Now I could use my knife and really just follow the line that I had. And I could turn the newspaper. That's what's also helpful about having this on newspaper is that I don't have to twist my arm around like crazy in order to cut it. I'm a right-handed person. I'm gonna cut well on the right side, not on the left side. I keep turning. And there we go, I cut through, and then I'm just gonna cut that. So this will all peel off. And I can even take my ruler now, 4.5. 4.5 looks good. That there. I like to start building on a piece of newspaper. but it doesn't need to be a huge piece. I'm just gonna take a little piece here and put it on my board. All right, put my slab back down. Now some of you might have done coil building in the past. If you have done coil building in the past, sometimes people that teach coil building insist that you score and slip between every single coil that you put on. I don't teach that way, and I wasn't taught that way. And I make pretty good coil vessels. The rule of thumb is, if you are connecting a piece of clay to another piece of clay that's the same wetness and consistency, you do not need to score and slip. When you are attaching a piece of clay that's wetter to a drier piece, you do need to score and slip. So, the times that I'm going to need to score and slip are without a doubt the times that I have built a little bit, wrapped it up, come back however many days later. I will need to score and slip the top of that vessel before I add the new coil, because the one area is more set up than the new coil. And then that's it. Once I add that new coil, everything else is same consistency to same consistency. As I'm building in a day, it's all the same consistency, so I'm fine. So it's a much easier way of building. When I am attaching a coil, I will attach it directly to the top of my base. I do not attach it over to the side. That will not work. So, when I'm attaching a coil, I'm just trying to see how good this will look on camera. I'll have to turn it. I am holding the coil with my left hand. Again, I'm right-handed. Holding this, and I'm going to put pressure down with my thumb. And you'll be able to see this as I turn this. So I am attaching the coil on the inside only. So you can see that. See, I have all my finger markings on the interior. There's none on the exterior. Okay, when I get to a point where I have ended one coil and I have a new one here, how do I start? I'm gonna just end it and start on top of the next one. Now what I need to remember is that this shape is starting to move in very quickly. So what I want to do is I want to look at this piece. I'm going to look at the top of the coil here. If I attach the coil, the new coil on top, just directly on top, it's going to make a cylinder. If I attach it to the outside edge, it's going to make it flare. If I attach it to the inside edge, it's going to make it come in. So that's what I want to do. I want to have this slowly come in. I'd have to look at what your drawings are, but my drawing says this. So when I get that next coil coming on top of the one underneath, I'm going to move it slightly inward. And again, I'm going to attach it, but notice that I'm attaching it slightly inward. I'm doing the same method. I'm only attaching with my thumb. The thing that's kind of neat, and you can kind of see it on the video, if I'm attaching well, what you'll see is this coil slightly rotate like this as it's attaching. Because as I am rolling it into position, it's going like this. I'm not forcing it, I'm allowing it to attach. So you see it kind of rolling? So, We know that in coil building, I'm building up in a spiral. It's inevitable. So I'm gonna have one side higher than another, almost at all times. So I'm gonna need to fix that as I'm going. All right, so I got that coil fully attached. I'm gonna make sure that things feel really secure. So I'm gonna take my fingers and I'm gonna make sure everything is compressed. I do this after every coil I attach. I should be able to walk over to your piece, pick it up and go like this. And the coil should not fall off. That shows me that you are attaching well as you're going. Right now, this is exposed coil, right? Because it's showing. For this project, you are going to need both hidden and exposed coil methods shown. All right, very simple. How do I do a hidden coil? Well, I erase the coil on the outside. One of the easiest ways to do this, though, is by blending, but I'm not gonna blend straight up and down. If I blend straight up and down, a lot of times my finger will catch and rip the coil off. So when I blend, I'm gonna blend at a 45-degree angle across, which is also including when I use my metal rip tool. I will use it across the piece at a 45-degree angle. This is how I get my coil pots nice and refined. So again, remember that metal rib tool is going to become your best friend in the pinch pot project in refining your forms. Same thing goes here. Your refinement or erasing of any coils, you're either going to use your fingers and then use your metal rib tool, or if you're comfortable, just use your metal rib tool.